Here we go. Subaru's new power in the sacrifice. Is a sacrifice with it? I didn't know that. I guess that's the cut content. Let's see what Mr. Annie's has to say.
Subaru's fight with Garfield brought forth a brand new power. But what you may not have noticed was the sacrifice that came before it.
What do you sacrifice?
A choice that ended up severing
the
Subaru's
gate.
Connection to the only non-fatal tool he had at his disposal.
So the gate is just actually broken now. This is beyond repair. It's gone forever. And this is a theme that's been happening since the beginning of ReZero. Ever since he used Shamak, right? Going to Arc 3, Felix can't even heal it properly. Subaru uses Shamak again, breaks, irreversible. But it has to be intentional, and this must help us in a different way. I don't know, maybe breaking a gate somehow allows him to use multiple witch factors. It seems like it's a sacrifice that came with it, right? He already has Return by Death, which I think is Authority of Envy, which I kind of feel like he's like borrowing it. That's like a proxy authority, borrowing from Satala, or the Witch of Envy. But the slot factor, this new invisible providence, and the gate breaking, what will that mean forward?
Ended up severing Subaru's connection to the only non-fatal tool he had at his disposal. It's one of the many things we'll talk about as we go over the cut content for this episode.
Alright.
A lot of which were scenes that went to extend the clumsy fight between Subaru and Garfield. So let's do as we usually do and take a look at what the anime left out from the novels.
But first,
this video is sponsored by Skillshare.
Y'all know what to do. Please go use the discount code ANNU Skillshare. I'm not even sure if that shit's available because this is 3 years ago.
Episode 41. None Can Lift the Quain Stone Alone. Covering the last 2 chapters of Volume 13 of the light novel. With Garfield looking the way that he was, Subaru wanted to confirm the safety of Otto and Ram before anything else.
Yeah, not gonna lie, I thought they died. But then I was like, no, they can't. This is the perfect run. Emilia's actually moving forward. We had the kiss. There's no way Garfield killed them.
But Garfield had no intention of giving him a straight answer. His refusal to even acknowledge it showed that he was looking for an excuse. An excuse that would allow him to end.
Holy shit, you guys are delayed more than usual. Now, mobile chatters are always delayed more than PC viewers, but you're literally now talking about the discount code. That shit was like 5 minutes ago.
The trial without having to kill anyone. This was Garfield's way of showing kindness. As he made his way halfway up the stairs, he found himself coming to a halt because Emilia's powers were still unknown to him. Facing off against her wasn't something that he could just rush into.
Emilia
so it gave Emilia the opportunity to talk about how she could relate to him. Because she understood how it was to be weak and afraid, she was able to acknowledge that the tomb was a place that could fix that. She knew that what she needed to find could likely only—
I mean, the tomb, trial 1, the more I think about it, it is the ultimate therapy session. It's just making you confront your past trauma and to get over it. It is literally the best way to resolve past traumas. Now, I don't know. I'm not a fucking therapist. I'm not a fucking psychiatrist. Maybe this kind of solution doesn't work for everyone and people will be hard stuck like Garfield, right? Or Emilia until they have the necessary... They need something else, right? Emilia had the memory to come back, and then she confronted the memories. And we still haven't even started trial for Emilia yet, but I've noticed that trial 1, Echidna's using it, it feels like a therapy session.
Only be found in the trial. That's why she couldn't let Garfield stop her. Now, everything Emilia was saying was pushing Garfield closer to the brink of anger. Subaru could tell that it was only a matter of time before he charged at her. So, before that could happen, Subaru switched that hostile intent over to him, talking all about Emilia's resilience in contrast to Garfield's cowardice. At first, Garfield tried to refute it. He believed Subaru was just trying to talk Emilia up because he liked her. To him, this trial set up by Echidna simply wasn't possible to win against. Not only did he not understand how facing one's past could be helpful, but he also saw it as some messed up test that Echidna put together for her own twisted amusement.
I think that is... All these things can be true. I think Echidna does want the content. I think that she gets just immeasurable pleasure watching and peeking through different people's traumas. But not only that, it can be used for good, right? And Garfield is like a chuny, 14-year-old, 8th grader. Not only is he that, he's also a demi-human. So then you gotta quote-unquote dumb it down a little bit more. So I understand why Garfield's behaving like this. It's just fucking annoying.
So it was for that reason that he refused to acknowledge its true purpose. Now, Subaru did agree that the trial was fabricated by a less than ideal person. But that grudge towards her didn't stop him from being grateful for what she'd given him. That's why Subaru could tell Garfield with such confidence that he was happy for the opportunity he was given.
Yeah, and Echidna straight up told us the secret. I'm sure this is what Annie's might be implying, but there was a little hint, right? Garfield is scared of the outside world. Then we made a plan. We probably talked to Shima. We got to know more about what's going on in Garfield.
It was an immense feeling of gratitude that neither Amelia nor Garfield could understand.
But this kind of seems more like how Subaru got closure with his parents. Even though it wasn't, the real parents weren't really there, he still got his closure.
It honestly wouldn't have been surprising if these words made him seem delusional. But no matter how ignorant these two were to the truth of it, the fact still remained that Echidna was the sole reason he was able to face his greatest regret. And that allowed him to keep pushing forward. So Subaru was trying to get Garfield to do the same. The key piece of information he was missing, though, wasn't the details regarding Garfield's past. It was the fact that he had to watch Amelia suffer through the same thing that he once did.
That's right. That's why he was getting big cat and getting angry at us for the sake of Amelia. So when I saw it through that perspective, I was like, all right, I guess doesn't just make him into just like a stupid antagonist. He has a reason to do it. But then Amelia comes out and says, nah, it's good to confront that past. Now Garfield's only thing doesn't really work anymore because he can't just like talk on behalf of Amelia anymore.
His inability to watch her be tormented by her past far exceeded his fear of Sanctuary being liberated. That was the core reason behind Garfield's actions. Now, when Garfield began to talk about his mother, he went on to say that Frederica didn't know that she was dead yet. Apparently, she never found out about the landslide.
That's right.
So Frederica was still living her life thinking her mother was just someplace far away. As we find out later,
That's
though,
what Garfield
this
thinks.
was a misconception we sought to be cleared up in the trial. We find out that his mother's death was something Frederica, Ryuzu, and the residents of Sanctuary all decided to keep from him. Had he not seen it for himself in the trial from 10 years ago, then it's likely he never would have found out at all. It was an act of compassion from all the people around him that ended up hurting him more than helping him.
That's right. They didn't want to... Like, she is dead. It happened. And they don't want him to, like, find out as a child, right? That's the entire point. I think I was a little confused during the anime episode. I was like, the fuck are they talking about? But it's confirmed. She's dead. And now Garfield's moving on, right?
It's likely he never would have found out at all. It was an act of compassion from all the people around him that ended up hurting him more than helping him.
Like, I am confused. So the mom is dead, right? Because the way that we're talking about right now, it sounds like they didn't really want to tell him about, like... He did see the fucking landslide shit, though, right? Like, she went to see the dad, and... she's dead. And there's no body we saw. It's all buried underneath. And everyone else didn't want to tell Garfield... Because you don't want to tell a child that your mom just got buried underneath the landslide.
Around him that ended up hurting him more than helping him. But anyway, Subaru's push for change fully conflicted with Garfield's intent to stay. As he was right now, Garfield couldn't see happiness as a byproduct of the change that Subaru was offering. And he refused to allow the people of Sanctuary to become sacrifices because of it. If there was even...
I'm gonna assume the mom's alive. Yeah, exactly. I don't see any bodies. I don't see no confirmation. People are assuming. Roswell created that landslide and faked the mom's death. Where is she now? I have no clue. Why did he do it? I don't know. He probably doesn't know either. The Grimoire told him. Isn't that a nice thing to just do now? We don't need to know the motives. Just blame it on the Grimoire. Yeah, the magic book told him to. Roswell just pulled his magic conch. She's like, shh, what should I do, magic conch? Fake Garfield's mom's death landslide. Okay, magic conch, you got it.
Even the slightest chance that Sanctuary's liberation would cause any of them sadness, then Garfield felt it was his job to prevent it. He wasn't going to allow a few to be happy at the expense of the rest. He wasn't going to impose change on people who didn't want it. So this was the moment that Garfield made the decision to kill Subaru. It was the only choice made left available to him. Although Subaru knew that his hesitation to do so earlier was out of kindness, he also knew that him choosing to do so now was nothing more than a display of his weakness. Making excuses then averting his eyes to the problem by turning into this beast was no longer the kindness that initially led Garfield to protect Sanctuary in the first place. Instead, it was a weakness that Subaru knew he could take advantage of,
And he
leading him
did.
to use Shamak as a means to do so.
One last time.
Now, what the anime didn't explain was that using his gate here was a very high-risk tactic.
Why?
Remember, Felix had forbid Subaru from using magic due to the stress it put on his gate.
See, but I thought this shit was like nearly all like healed up, right? It was, the gate was never really fixed. The last time we used Shamak before this, when was that? I think it was just Arc 2. Did he use it in Arc 3? I can't remember. Yes? Yes. Whale subjugation shit? Yes. Right? No, I can't remember. Regardless, it's just been a theme of him constantly using against Julius too. I thought he only used sand attack there. But this shit being broken, now what does it mean for Subaru's actual powers? Because like, doesn't seem like you need a gate to use an authority. In fact, is it even better? Like, can you use authorities even better if a gate is broken? Like, what does this imply?
Very high-risk tactic. Remember, Felix had forbid Subaru from using magic due to the stress it put on his gate. So, using it here meant that he could very well end up not being able to cast magic ever again. And
fuck magic, bro. Magic is overrated. We got authorities.
That's actually kind of what happened. When Subaru had cast the spell, it had caused his gate to collapse for good.
Okay.
The instant the darkness began to spew from his body, Subaru could feel his connection to the deepest part of himself slowly start to fade. Whatever thin cord had once linked him to his magic was now completely severed. What this meant was that the tool Subaru had relied on so many times before was now gone forever.
No more Shamak, bro. We can't use... I mean... Shamak was pretty useful. I'm not sure how effective Subaru Shamak was, but it was a nice little smokescreen and maybe caused the enemy to be debilitated from their visions and hearing and other senses. But I don't think we need it. Let's retire it. Let's just evolve into authorities now. We have Invisible Providence and we have Return by Death. And I'm sure we're going to collect even more witch factors as the story continues.
His gate had been fully destroyed. He was now incapable of casting magic himself ever again. Now, the fact the magic had even worked was much more than Subaru could have asked for. So, despite it leaving him forever, he was still grateful for everything it had done for him.
That's the coolest I've seen him. What the hell? It makes it look like these are all like invisible, the authority, the shadows, right? Look at this aura, man.
That's why we saw him say thanks in the anime. It was one last sign of gratitude. A sympathetic farewell to a part of him he'd chosen to sacrifice. After Puck had drained all the mana from Garfield's transformed body, Subaru was able to step...
Yeah, so I thought the crystal just had like an auto mana suck ability, but Puck did help there. And regarding this gate stuff, I don't think this is an L. I think that this is a blessing in disguise. Obviously, to us, it kind of seems shitty. A gate is important to use magic. Subaru had the Shadow Affinity. We saw how Byakuya was utilizing Shadow Magic. Even though it seems to be only debuff oriented, that there is an offensive capability by making it crystallized. However, I feel like this is better for it. And I don't know why or how. Something about him finally using the Invisible Providence after the gate shattered. What does that imply? Well, before he was never able to use it. Why? I'm not sure. Was it because of the existence of the gate and he could only use one authority before? But now that the gate broke, it somehow allows him to multi-use the fucking authorities? I'm not sure, but the gate breaking... Why would Tape do this? Why would he introduce him as a Shadow Affinity user that uses Shamak, a very scuffed one? Have the gate constantly be in a state of fragility, and now finally break and then a new power shows up. You know? Something about that feels odd and very intentional, and I think that it's gonna help us.
That's why we saw him say thanks in the anime. It was one last sign of gratitude. A sympathetic farewell to a part of him he'd chosen to sacrifice. After Puck had drained all the mana...
Nerf him? You really think Natsuki Subaru needs a nerf? Bro, we're begging for a fucking buff because how useless he is by himself. Finally, he has something that he can kind of fight 1v1 with. Until now, dude just runs away, AoE taunt, debuff sometimes, a very scuffed one, that's it. And then he needs his friend to work for him. It's just like, ah, shit, bro. We've been fucking getting carried by everyone else. Well, that's arguable. You know, we did the uniting and we gave them the information and the strategic, the tactician that is Subaru. But finally, at least he has some sort of competency in like a alone situation.
From Garfield's transformed body, Subaru was able to step up and finally face him on equal footing. Only in this moment of extreme exhaustion could Subaru ever hope to have a fair fight with him. So it brings us to a brawl that went on far longer than what was shown in the anime.
This is a cool scene. He just tanks that punch and then spits the tooth out. I wonder if he's going to be missing a tooth or if we're just going to ignore that. Maybe it's just his wisdom tooth. Garfield did a dental procedure on us for here. Nice.
Since both couldn't get the other to see their point of view, they both felt the need to beat it into each other. So both threw punches that impacted with each other's faces right at the same time. Now, unlike the anime, Garfield never made the effort to remove the crystal from his arm.
What?
It just stayed embedded there the entire time,
For honor?
constantly draining his mana and making him weaker.
Is he just stupid?
This allowed Subaru to withstand his hits as if they were coming from a regular human,
Okay.
giving him the chance to retaliate right after the punch we saw in the anime. What Subaru did was instantly hit back with a solid kick to the gut, then a punch to his face. They weren't exactly the cleanest looking hits, but they were attacks infused with all the
It's fucking still crazy, bro. This is Arc 1 Subaru, bro. Fucking dancing with Elsa. What the hell? This shit even just like, it shocks me even more now. Like, this entire scene, how did he do this? Look! Look,
They
look!
weren't exactly the cleanest
What?
looking hits, but they were attacks infused.
And he's using Ramji's heavy-ass giant fucking blunt weapon. Insane! Insane! Like, they show some scenes for when, like, Emilia is super strong, right? In Frozen Bond 2 as well as Break Time. There's some moments where they kind of, like, tease, like, yeah, Emilia's got, like, insane strength. This dude, also, early game, even if Elsa's playing with their food, nah, there's something odd about this. A complete neat, 17-year-old neat that only does home exercises, workouts, grip strength. He's moving like Jackie Chan in Arc 1, dude.
With all their emotion. Every strike Subaru and Garfield gave to each other echoed down to their very core. It was a clumsy display of fighting that continued until Garfield's superior skills gave him the advantage. He evaded Subaru's next attack.
Oh no. Unlimited Blade Works is ruined, guys. Yeah, spoiled. We can't watch Unlimited Blade Works anymore. Blame Annie News.
On his body in a way that allowed him to elbow Subaru right in the stomach.
Wait, isn't that the main character? Yo, ain't this red-haired kid the main fucking character? He just got bopped by a salary man.
Subaru right in the stomach.
Okay, now I want to watch Unlimited Blade Works. Now we have to watch UBW, bro. What the fuck? This salaryman has hands! Dude, the red-haired kid has a fucking sword he's attacking, and then the salaryman just fists it!
In a way that allowed him to elbow Subaru
Oh!
right in the
Oh!
stomach. With Subaru now hunched over from the pain, Garfield was then able to strike the back of his head and knock him down, following it up with a knee to his face as he was still in the motion of falling.
Alright.
This knocked Subaru backwards enough to maintain his footing, which really only went to make Garfield even more angry since he still wasn't able to finish the fight yet. That said, Subaru was also a bit upset that Garfield wasn't letting him look good in front of Emilia.
He was thinking about that? He's actually thinking about, shit, you making me look cooked in front of Emilia. Please go down.
He did respect Garfield's display of strength, but he hated that he was using it to go so far for such a futile effort.
That's just so funny to me. In this, like, it's not a live or die situation, but it is still a brawl, and it's like a pretty important fight. That he's just thinking is that, oh man, he's still getting up. Emilia's gonna think I'm weak.
No matter how much Garfield fought, Subaru knew that there was no changing the future that was coming for him. So he felt a bit of sadness towards this person that was putting so much effort into trying to stop it. He had even considered telling him about the tragedy awaiting his sister at the mansion.
How would you know
but
that?
He knew that that wasn't the best approach. Sure, it may have worked to get him to step aside right now, but it wouldn't have helped to settle the issues deep inside him. No. What Subaru needed to do right now was help Garfield get over the roadblock keeping his heart in place.
Literal roadblock.
As he tried to do exactly
the landslide.
that, something began to burn from deep inside him. Something unfamiliar was starting to assert
The
its
witch
existence from the
factor?
deepest part of his body. It
Sloth?
was taking the place of where his gate used to be.
Yeah, see? Like, there has to be some sort of significance with the gate breaking and authority happening. But let's think about this. Betelgeuse used earth magic, right? He did. He used a form of Dona. Maybe it was like old Dona, maybe it was like just base Dona, I forget. But he did use earth magic against the fight with Julius and Subaru. Betelgeuse had his gate and still could use the authority. But for Subaru, it's not the case, and it almost seems like a condition to use the authority, or maybe I'm conflating these two occurrences happening at the same time, and there is actually no connection.
From the deepest part of his body. It was taking the place of where his gate used to be. So, while this newly stolen power was birthing itself into existence, Subaru was trying with all his heart to convince Garfield to take the first steps forward. He was trying to get Garfield to at least consider the help that everyone was offering.
See, I still want to believe that even if Betelgeuse has his gate and can use the authority of Sloth, that it has to do with Subaru using multiple authorities. I just feel like that's gotta be the reason. Something about the gate breaking and Subaru being a uniter and getting multiple authorities. I just want to believe that, but that also seems a little bit too simple. It's a very battle shonen cliche thing, but we'll see.
But Garfield was just too stubborn to give up on the feelings that made him this way. It was a decision that left him with no other choice but to continue fighting, sending him charging towards Subaru like a child throwing a tantrum. Because he was so focused on Subaru alone, he wasn't able to detect the invisible hand that was waiting for him. It brings us to the moment when Subaru lands the decisive blow. A final attack that left both Subaru and Garfield at their upper limits. Now, after a certain land dragon came to finish the fight herself, Amelia could finally let out a sigh knowing that everything was done. There were numerous times throughout the battle where she just wanted to intervene. But Subaru's words and expressions of determination worked to keep her fragile heart in check.
Yeah, and Amelia can't make Subaru look bad. You know, she can't just show up and just end the fight. Gotta make the man finish it.
So, rather than let doubt cloud her mind, she instead watched the battle to its conclusion just as Subaru had asked her to, never once stepping in to say so much as a single word. The truth of the matter, though, was that the entire thing was actually quite painful for her. She hated having to stand by and do nothing while these two settled their dispute in such an incomprehensible manner.
Okay.
Nothing about it made any sense to her. But even if that was how she felt, there was still something about it that made her unable to look away. She was becoming
Subaru's determination. It's like a brawl between men, you know? They're just duking it out, trying to get there. It's a conversation of words through fist, and maybe Subaru looked kind of cool there, and Amelia was like, you know what? All right, you guys handle it.
More and more captivated by the determination of these two fighters, much to the point that she'd literally forgotten how to breathe. The more she watched, the more she became aware of this strange burning feeling inside of her.
Oh?
Something within her chest was slowly taking hold of her.
You telling me that a significant point beyond the kiss is the Garfield Subaru fight that makes Amelia be like, damn, yo, my man's kind of cool. Yo, this the dude that kissed me? Like, that's what it seems like it's happening.
Although she didn't know what it was, she did understand that it had manifested because of what she was looking at. That's why even after the fight was finished, Amelia still found herself frozen in awe as she tried her best to understand the feeling inside of her. Only after realizing that Subaru needed her healing did she finally snap back to her senses. So, with the help of the minor spirits around her, Amelia used her magic to heal both Subaru and Garfield.
Minor spirits. No longer lesser. We have minor and major spirits, boys. And the four major spirits, that's right. Puck and, you know, the three other ones.
Then it was shortly after that Otto returned from the forest while carrying Ram on his back.
Okay.
Now, while Subaru was unconscious, he became well aware of this new stagnant feeling that was manifesting within him. Since he had a vague familiarity as to what it was, he decided not to ask why, how, or even what it came for.
How convenient. Wouldn't that have been... Because, like, everyone saw that happen, but no one questions them. He's like, yo, a purple hand? Maybe they can't see it. Maybe they just can't see it like Betelgeuse's hand? I don't know. Like, we can see it, right? But I don't know if Amelia or Garfield could see it. It's weird.
Instead, he simply accepted it as his own and skipped straight to naming it Invisible Providence.
Yeah, and...
After
it is quite literally invisible. True. I mean, it's literally because like this skill is essentially just fucking. It's what on it's unknown hands, right? No, unseen hand. It's literally unseen hand, except just deflated. It's a tiny ass hand that shows up. It doesn't even fucking compare to Betelgeuse's power. And the sad thing is, maybe it's because of proficiency, right? Because like we just got it, you know. Maybe it needs to take a lot of time to train it up and get used to it. But besides that, Betelgeuse was also very incompatible with the witch factor. Right? He was a very diligent person. He hated being slothful. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with compatibility of the witch factors, but isn't Betelgeuse very incompatible and is actually one of, even though he was the most active and one of the most well-known archbishops amongst the public because he's always trying to go for the ordeal, right? And Regulus is also well-known. Betelgeuse isn't actually that strong, right? Due to the incompatibility. Subaru, does this imply that Subaru is also very incompatible with the witch factor? I'm not sure, but a very interesting thing that I read is, notice how the hand is so tiny, right? Notice how the hand...
When Subaru lands the...
Let's see. Notice how the hand is very tiny, and it's just like one hand. What passage about sloth do we know regarding Satala? About, I was unable to wipe your tears away. People are saying shit like, yo, this... sloth, unknown authority, invisible providence, it relates to his ability to wipe away Satala's tears because it's so fucking tiny hand. It's only one hand. I don't know if they're coping. Maybe we're trying to make too much fucking sense out of it. Like it's fucking high school English class, and people are saying, "Yo, why is the curtains blue?" And then the teachers are like, "Oh, it symbolizes the melancholy and like the sadness and the despair of you." Shut the fuck up, bitch! It's just blue, right? Sometimes there's no meaning. But I'm like, maybe you're onto something, man. Maybe you're onto something.
Invisible providence. After he awoke and started talking to Otto, Subaru went on to ask how he managed to get Ram to cooperate with him. But that was a question Otto couldn't answer. You see, one of the conditions of her lending her help was that he couldn't tell Subaru the reasons as to why. So it was pretty apparent from Otto's fearful expression that he wasn't going to say anything more. Switching over to Garfield.
Because of Roswell?
That was a question get Ram to cooperate with. After he awoke and started talking to Otto, Subaru went on to ask how he managed to get Ram to cooperate with him.
Otto, how'd you do it?
But that was a question Otto couldn't answer.
Interesting.
You see, one of the conditions of her lending her help was that he couldn't tell Subaru the reasons as to why.
Why?
So it was pretty apparent from Otto's fearful expression that he wasn't going to say anything more.
Is it plot related regarding Roswell, or is he just being tsundere? I don't know.
He wasn't going to say anything more. Switching over to Garfield, Ram's face being the first thing he saw was both something he wanted and didn't want. It was a conflicting feeling that disappeared the moment she threw him off her lap. She then immediately began to scold him for having left her so injured all alone in the forest. But most of all, she was angry that Garfield lacked the single most important trait of a warrior. For all three of the battles he had fought, not once did Garfield put on a single display of courage. Instead, he chose to rely on the blood that he normally despised, using it to turn into this mindless beast and avoid having to think about the consequences of his actions.
And that's not courageous.
To Ram, this was nothing more than foolish hypocrisy. That's why she told him that he needed to think less. She wasn't saying that he needed to do so by turning into the beast, but...
That was so out of hand. After she throws him off the lap, she's also like, Garfield, you're stupid, so don't bother thinking.
Instead, that transforming makes him become more stupid than he already is. So it was just better for him to stay the way he was and fight without the burden of having to think.
Okay.
This, of course, was Ram implying that he'd be fighting for them now. An insinuation that Garfield didn't take all too pleasantly. As soon as Ram pointed towards the tomb, though, that's when Garfield began to piece together why it was she decided to join Subaru in the first place. He began to think that her intentions were never to get him to join their side at all. The way she was acting indicated something else. It was almost as if everything she'd done was with the intention of helping him. Although Ram would never personally admit it, cooperating with Subaru and scolding Garfield here was pretty much her way of giving him the push that he needed.
Helping Subaru,
everything she'd done was with the purpose of helping a friend. That was her primary reason for siding with Subaru.
Oh, so it was primary. But so maybe Roswell was involved, I'm not really sure. But, you know, she's tsundere. She can never admit it, right? She can never say, like, I love you. It's always just,
siding with Subaru. Now, part of this realization went towards building Garfield's newfound resolve to take the trial. But that still didn't help to sway the fear that was deeply instilled in him. Even as he walked through the narrow corridor of the tomb, many doubts still flowed through his head. There was still the pressing feeling that challenging the trial was nothing more than a futile effort. I mean, part of him was definitely considering destroying the tomb right now. His blessing of the Earth Spirit had restored more than enough of his strength to allow him to do it.
Okay, so a little bit more about blessing of the earth. I don't know exactly what these blessings do, but I just thought it makes him use earth magic easier, or maybe even incantationless, as we saw with his foot, make that footing with the earth. But it also just like increases regeneration. This shit's really nice. Wonder what felt blessing of the wind does, other than make her just super fast.
And no one was even around to stop him. So if Garfield wanted to, he could very well achieve his previous goal without any resistance whatsoever. It was a perplexing situation that made him question why Ram or Subaru would even allow it. Garfield wasn't sure whether it was because they trusted him or because they knew he was too cowardly to do it. What he did know though was that he'd find out for sure at the end of the trial. One thing to note here was that Garfield truly hoped that something would change. He'd finally opened his heart to accept that it was possible. But when he found that he couldn't interfere with the past, he began to doubt that his hope would...
This is more funny than sad to me when he started punching his little baby self.
The past. He began to doubt that his hope would actually come true. It made him think that the trial was only trying to show him how weak and useless he was. It made him think that that was the only conclusion he was supposed to come to. So, as Garfield slowly approached the cusp of despair, he suddenly remembered the words that Subaru had told him. And it was in that moment that he was able to deny the shallow conclusion that he was coming to. Instead, he began to look for a different one. He began to look for that new starting point that Subaru had mentioned. This was when Garfield truly started to acknowledge the memories of his past, from which the only thing we need to mention is a small detail about the crystals. In case you were wondering, these had nothing to do with Garfield's mother being an apostle. She simply wore them because she found them to be beautiful.
That's it?
It was for that reason and that reason alone that she decided to give them to her children as gifts.
Alright, no crazy theories there.
The rest of the trial went pretty much as we saw. It mainly served towards clearing up that misconception I mentioned earlier. The hiding of the truth that caused Garfield more anguish than happiness. Aside from that, not much else really needs to be said about the episode. The last scenes with Amelia were more or less identical. So that brings us to the end of Volume 13 and to the end of this episode.
Alright.
If you enjoyed what you saw, then be sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great video. Please go give Mr. Annie's a like. Here's the video link. Check out his channel if you haven't. But, the Garfield stuff. Guys, I'm not gonna lie. I do not give a fuck about Garfield closure. Call me a sociopath, call me whatever you want. I just don't have a personal connection with it. He's just a fucking annoying dumbass cat that finally got his story closed, so now we can actually move on to the main shit. Come on now. Don't act like you fucking care about Garfield. If you do, alright, you can have your favorite character, right? But to me, the Garfield shit was more annoying than enjoyable, but I understand the significance. And I think the most important shit was this. To me, this power. What is happening? Subaru's sloth witch factor. What led up to this? Well, Echidna stimulated it twice apparently while improving the resistance and stability of whatever. I think that had to do with the mental fortitude, but that was during the Tea Party shit. And now with the gate breaking and Subaru's power just showing up. The significance of it, the gate breaking, why it's a tiny little hand. Does it have to do with his broken gate? Does it have to do with proficiency of the authorities and he doesn't have enough practice with it? Is it because he just fucking sucks? What kind of power? Like, do you need mana to use the authorities? I don't know. I don't know any of the fucking rules, but to me it just seems like this is way too coincidental. There is no way that this is way too not coincidental. I feel like there is a purpose in the gate breaking and his skills coming out, and perhaps this hints at him, I don't know, using more fucking authorities in the future and not just, you know, Sloth, the invisible providence. Or maybe I'm wrong and there's actually nothing about the gate breaking that had tie in with this power, and in fact Subaru is more nerfed than ever. I have no clue. That's it for me.